Hello, everyone. It's Dr.SHIVA Ayyadurai. We're going to be discussing the Canadian wildfires and the carbon tax scam. I have Glenn Halls, one of our Truth from Health warrior leaders in Canada. When I started looking at this from that systems perspective, what Trudeau is propagandizing, or what Newsom in California is propagandizing, or the prime ministers in Australia, these people are very clever. They profit from promoting the fear that climate change and forest fires are directly related. Because when they have fear, uncertainty, doubt, people say, oh my God, we got to tax people. The slaves should be so happy you're going to get taxed because you're going to stop these forest fires. Canada's carbon taxes are probably one of the highest in the world. $50 per ton. That was 2002. This year went to $65 per ton, and it's going to surge by 2030 to $170 per ton. So who do these carbon taxes affect? They're not affecting the very wealthy who can afford this, like Justin Trudeau driving around in his private plane. They affect small businesses who are attempting to survive.
Consumers who are like me, hey, it's holidays. Where am I going to go? I'm not going to go anywhere. None of us can afford to go anywhere.
So if you look at Canada, if you look at the United States, and particularly Canada, for my analysis, it really affects everyday people. So everyday people are being propagandized. Yes, we need the carbon tax because look, these forest fires. Ultimately, what it does is it affects the individual, where it's locking people out of the housing market, because this carbon tax is actually added, as I understand in Canada, to other fees in the purchase price. That's what it's actually doing to people. And it's not only the carbon tax that's added when you purchase a home, it's a whole bunch of other legislation that comes out of it, basically turned buying a home a nightmare for most people. And so the government really loves carbon tax because when you say, how did you come up with this price? They have a very complex formulation that no one can understand. The goal of all this is to tax the individual. And so it used to be $50 per ton in 2022. This is in Canada, and it's going to head up to 170 tons in 2030. That's a tripling, 300% increase to the average Canadian citizen. The government loves this because they can just add a new tax. They don't really have to explain how they came up with this because it's a black art.
Yeah, they don't have to explain. They don't give us a choice. And just this other aspect of the system view, you might say, we should have some voice in Parliament to ask for explanation, to ask for clarity, to object. It just gets rammed on through, and it always goes into areas where we can't opt out, where we have no recourse. It's built in before it gets to us, before you actually fill your tank, before you buy the house, it's built in. So they're very clever this way.
The entire carbon tax scam is based on a fiction of climate change. And I want to get to that. But Glenn, what do you think about if I play that video that I did? Let me bring it up here. This is what's taking place. Businesses take resources, create products, we buy them, and these businesses have been polluting. Has anything changed post the Paris Accords? In fact, they're polluting a lot more. Between now and 2030, guess what? China's still allowed to pollute. In fact, China is allowed to double their pollution during this period. There's going to be a big payday for these guys because they're going to be able to sell China carbon credits. And fundamentally, what this does is makes liberal bourgeois feel good that they're part of the Paris Accords, and this generates the ability for this group to generate trillions of dollars in new source of wealth. So Glenn, that video was done 6 years ago when I was running for Senate, and it hasn't changed. The wildfires in Canada create the fear, uncertainty, and doubt to make citizens slaves mentally. They say, oh yeah, we need the carbon tax. Carbon tax is good. But the carbon tax entire scam is basically a scam that's going to create trillionaires. And that's what it's doing. Elon Musk is behind the carbon tax. Robert F. Kennedy's behind the carbon tax. All of these people are behind the carbon tax because they're all part of the swarm. They're going to have a huge payday come 2030.
That system there doesn't reduce pollution at all.
They're very clever how they use the word carbon and CO2. That's like saying hydrogen and H2O. So when they use the word carbon, you think dirty, like it's all a mental manipulation. CO2 is something that's extremely necessary for plants. When CO2 levels go below 200 parts per million, life ends. In fact, CO2 levels have been 10 times higher, and that's when life actually did well. What do pot weed gardeners do? They're pumping CO2.
They pump it in. They pump it in.
Whether it's California, whether it's Australia, whether it's Canada, the government officials, and everyone needs to get this very clear, they are incentivized to make sure the forest fires burn longer. Because then they can promote the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. They can justify why you're going to pay $170 per ton of carbon that you, bad citizen, put out there. So just think about it. The climate is constantly changing, and we should talk about that, why this whole climate change itself is a scam. And then forest fires will occur. But if you really wanted to solve forest fires, you would invest in infrastructure. So they're not investing in any of these big airplanes with the water bombing things. They fired a lot of their volunteers because they were refusing to get vaccinated. So anything you would do to, let's say there's a fire taking place here, I'd want to make sure you get rid of the fires fast. I'd make sure there were good fire extinguishers. I'd make sure there was water. I'd make sure there was enough firemen. They've fired a lot of the volunteer fire people because they wouldn't get vaccinated. They haven't put in the necessary infrastructure. That's what you would do. So if you cared about forest fires, you would invest in the infrastructure. They haven't done that. Trudeau has not done that. So he is incentivized to burn the forests because then he can get on and say, it's a climate change. I need to now charge you a tax. So that needs to be clearly understood, Glenn. They make more money off charging the carbon tax than they do by solving the problem by investing money in the infrastructure to have more of the equipment to put out and supporting volunteers who want to help. All of these places, California, Canada, Australia, the number one reason, separate from the lightning and all that these forest fires start is because of arsonists.
Absolutely.
People don't want to talk about these. There are people who are just freaking crazy. They love fires. They're called arsonists. Anytime the weatherman gets all excited, oh my God, it's going to be a very hot day, the arsonists get out there and there's very little penalty for arson. Why don't you put life-term sentence, death penalty, life if you start a forest fire? They don't want to do that. So from a systems perspective, they don't want to impose really severe laws for someone who starts a forest fire. They don't want to invest in infrastructure. They don't want to keep people who can help put out the forest fires. They fired a lot of them. So they have no interest in putting out forest fires. Because they keep the criminal liability low, they're saying, go start a forest fire. And when you start a forest fire, we're going to get on the television and social, oh my God, look at these forest fires. So then Americans in New York are seeing the forest fires. The skies were orange and everything. Oh my God, we got to stop climate change. A forest fire is pure, beautiful theater to promote the carbon tax scam, period.
Well, I agree. Just some local context here. There's a bit of an enforcement aspect to that too. I'm in central Alberta, a place called Edmonton, and way up from me is a place called Grand Prairie where there are all these fires. The local townspeople were just starting to get together, not even looking at the authorities and their mayors and everything, and say, look, we've got eyewitnesses that saw them start the fire. Why don't you after them? The fees are low, but the police are not actually looking for them either. Some of the farmers got together to preserve their own land. This is west of us. They've got a lot of heavy equipment. You can just make big soil berms and actually block the progression of the fire from wrecking your place. Police tried to stop them from doing that. They said, no, you can't do that. You can't protect your own place. We're in charge here. I think there's maybe some collaboration there on the police end too.
Yeah, a lot of this is the swarm effect, right? It's more, you make sure you're not doing the things that would definitively need to be done to stop forest fires, right?
Right.
The farmers, as I understand, be it in Australia, be it in Canada or California, they know this. The farmers know that whenever it's a very, very hot day, the arsonists come out and they've seen it. And the farmers historically for centuries know how to stop forest fires. As you say, they dig up the dirt there so the forest fire does. This is a very common technique people have been using in traditional cultures for centuries, millennia. To your point, they don't allow the farmers to do that. They don't invest in the large aircraft which can drop lots of water. And they are literally not hiring forest people. And then they mismanage the forest. That's another big thing that's forgotten. There's some basic forest management stuff that needs to be done in the national parks, right? And they actively do not do that. So from a systems perspective, it's not any one thing. So one thing is they actively mismanage the forests, right? They actively do not invest in infrastructure for those equipment that can toss out fires. They actively intimidate farmers from doing what they would naturally do. And there are no real penalties for arsonists. So these four things, and there's probably others, the government purposely does not do the necessary, there's solutions right there, right? Lifetime sentence prison. If you start, boom, that will cut off all the arsonists right there. Make sure you invest in personnel to go regularly do the basic forest management. Indigenous cultures, we're always doing this basic forest management. Allow at the decentralized level, the farmers to block, right?
Exactly.
And three, invest in the very good equipment that actually does stop forest fires. So that's four things that can be done. But Trudeau hasn't done any of that. In fact, what he's also done, he never blames China for anything.
Right.
Meaning, why do I say that? China is the biggest polluter. As I said in that video, they doubled their pollution. But he doesn't say anything to the fact that all the windmills, all the electric cars, 97% of all the electric car equipment comes from China. How much pollution that they create. China's never questioned in this equation about the solar panels. If you look at the solar panels, the windmills, the electric car batteries, they're all coming from China. And he never talks about the amount of pollution they're putting putting up and what's that doing to the environment. They're given a complete get out of jail free card. And on top of that, he will fly his private planes. He will do all of his things. A good teacher of mine said, whenever you see such major contradictions, there's another agenda.
Right.
And the agenda, when you have this kind of hypocrisies, they want forest fires. That's it.
Yep.
They profit from forest fires, because with forest fires, you get everyone from New York to all over the United States saying, oh my God, we must stop this climate change. We got to stop climate change. Yes, I'm willing to take the tax. The solution is we have to build a bottoms-up movement.
In Canada, there's a lot of us that are really disillusioned and looking for solutions. We have to educate ourselves, educate our neighbor, and gradually build this consciousness. So it's not going to be anything sexy and fast, but come to the town hall, come to open house, start studying the system.
This is about a reciprocal relationship. When you support our campaign, you contribute to Truth, Freedom, Health. We give you the tools. It's invaluable. I mean, it took me 50 years. Students at MIT pay hundreds of thousands of dollars. No one can afford that. Like Prometheus bringing fire to help all of you. That's what Truth, Freedom, and Health is. And that's what our campaign is. But it's up to you guys to get off your butts. Anyone who's in our campaign doesn't complain. We're talking about how to win. It's a very fundamental shift. It's a very positive thing. There's no depressed people in our movement. People are active. We're talking about what to do. We are happy. We are not fat, dumb, and lazy. We actually enjoy each other's company. It's a global movement. 500 million people know we exist. 500,000 people across the world have touched us. But it's time for you to get involved. People can go to truthfreedomhealth.com, become a warrior scholar, number one. Number two, go to Shiva for President and know that I'm running. I'm putting myself out there, and they're so afraid of me that they will not cover me, or they won't put me on the debate ticket because they know I'll destroy these fucking idiots. It's a technical term I have for them, fucking idiots. Please use that. Please share it with your children. Teach your children to curse at the right person at the right time. It's very important to call these people fucking idiots. That's what they are. And if you have a problem with that language, well, then you should ask yourself, do you have a problem how much they screw you every day?
Right.
And if you don't have a problem with that, then you're probably lobotomized and you should probably go see a neurologist. But the bottom line is that these people are fucking idiots who are in the front, and they don't want someone like me challenging them. The people behind them, the trillionaires, know exactly what they're doing. And the only way out of this is not going to be an overnight solution. As Glenn and I just shared, we have to educate people. That's why the slogan we have for the movement that we're doing for Truth, Freedom, and Health, it's a very, very simple slogan. Get educated or be enslaved. So if you want to be fucked with all day and you want to be a dumb fuck, then you're going to think, oh my God, we got to do this now. Oh my God. No, we got to get educated. And you got to get educated with the right knowledge. And you have to learn how to think, not what to think. And it's all here. It took me 50 years to put this together so we can smash and shatter the swarm, but you got to do the work. This is something interesting. Someone said, fucking idiots, repeat the swarm are fucking idiots. Yes. And please, anytime if someone says you're cursing, I don't like that, you should tell them you're a fucking idiot. Okay? Because especially if that same person is not angry after seeing the swarm video, after seeing the knowledge, if you don't have a righteous anger.
Well, that's just it. Why isn't everybody furious? Like, it almost consumes you. There's so much anger with what's going on. I mean, come on. A little swear word. I hate these guys. I mean, come on. Like, you're being used and misled every single day. Get with the program.
All right, everyone. Be well, be the light.